Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by the guys at Illegal Use of Hands, Hands to the Face, a football show. How's it going, guys?
I think we're both doing pretty well. How are you doing, Jake?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Thanks for coming on and kind of a short notice. And again, we're going to talk about the NFL and everything that happened the last 2 or 3 days, actually the last 3 days. But before we start talking about that, if you guys want to mention your football show, your YouTube channel, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so our YouTube channel is Illegal Use of Hands, Hands to the Face. Long name, just to be kind of funny and ironic. But we just like to talk about football on a weekly basis. Right now, we're doing about 2 shows a week, and see a preview for the week and then a recap of what happened all week. And we go through all the games. We throw some. Now we've been throwing some timestamps in, so they're long videos. But if you just want to hear us talk about your team, feel free to come check us out. And hopefully, we say something that interests you or makes you want to comment and tell us why we're wrong. That's the best, is when people tell us why we're wrong.
Do you want to add anything to that, Jake? Or
we're wrong a lot. So not recently though. We haven't been getting a lot of comments saying we're wrong. So pleased with that.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, ESPN is wrong most of the time too. So, all right. And of course, what happened over the last few days has been crazy. Of course, the trade deadline, the NFL is always crazy. But the first thing that actually happened on Wednesday morning. Aaron Rodgers is out for their next game versus the Chiefs. That would basically make Jordan Love the starter for Sunday. It'd be his first ever game he starts. Where you guys are, how shocked were you with the Aaron Rodgers news?
Jake, I'll let you take this one first.
I mean, I was shocked because it said that he was vaccinated during training camp and all that. So I just thought it was going to be smooth sailing with him, and he was going to ride out the whole season without any problems. At first, when I saw the news too, I mean, I still had that in the back of my head. And I was like, why is he out for Sunday? He's got to sit for 2 days. But yeah, no, he can't play. Getting Jordan Love out there, though, against that Chiefs defense, I don't think it's going to be as bad as, I mean, a lot of people thought as soon as the news got out there.
I think that then it's interesting talking about how, I mean, that happening. I definitely wasn't expecting the news. My first thought was, I thought, I'm really not keeping track very well of who is or isn't vaccinated in the NFL. I just made the assumption that he was, and it's like, dang, he got really unlucky in terms of getting his monthly test it is for people that are vaccinated. I just made the assumption he was, and he actually got it in that short time period. But whether or not that's the case, that's not really a big deal. He's out. That's the important thing in terms of football. And if he's out, I'm very interested to see how this is going to go, because something that Jake and I have really talked about a ton recently is just how the Chiefs and their entire thing has been like, we don't want to be out on the Chiefs yet in terms of the record being bad and even keeping games close, like against the Giants that really shouldn't be close when you talk about their roster. It's very interesting, but probably I would have favored the Packers like really heavily in this game, if Rodgers was playing. But with Jordan Love in, it becomes a lot more interesting because the Chiefs have kind of obviously slowed down from where they were like the past few years. But then Jordan Love may even it out because the Packers have been playing like one of the best teams in the league up to this point. I'm still really having trouble figuring out which way I think this game's going to go. But I do think the Chiefs any given week could just come on and start playing really hot again. So that's another interesting aspect to it. It's just, when is that going to come? Because they still had the turnover issues against the Giants on Monday night.
Yeah, like the Chiefs, when I saw them take on not the Packers, when they took on the Giants on Monday night, they didn't look that great. I mean, Mahomes, turned the ball over twice. He fumbled. And of course, the interception was kind of not really necessarily his fault. It was tipped pass. But I mean, they didn't look super impressive. They barely beat the Giants, who are one of the worst teams in the NFC at least. But I mean, with Jordan Love out, this probably favors the Chiefs, or not with Jordan Love, but with Aaron Rodgers out, this definitely favors the Chiefs. But I think if Rodgers plays, I think this game would be closer than a lot of people think. Of course, if Rodgers is playing, I'd give the edge to Green Bay. But now that Jordan Love is making his first career start with Rodgers being out, I would probably favor the Chiefs a little bit. But again, the Chiefs haven't been as good this year as they were the last few years. And it's still probably up in the air, but I'm going to probably just go with the Chiefs just because Jordan Love is making his first career start. How well do you think he'll perform this Sunday versus Kansas City?
I'd say that we got a chance to see a good amount of him as Bills fans in one preseason game that we played against the Packers. He played the majority of it. They actually moved the ball really successfully, but kind of talking about the Chiefs with how they've played really this season. The theme of that one preseason game that we watched with Jordan Love playing a significant amount in was that they were moving the ball and then they would have like one thing get screwed up to just completely ruin the drive. So he got like, I remember, I mean, the drive that comes to my mind the most is like one where I feel like they started like maybe inside their own 15-yard line in the preseason, the Packers, and they moved the ball all the way down the field, inside our 15, maybe even. And then Jordan Love has a play that's like a bootleg, and he just chucks up a prayer that there's no chance is going to get answered. And that type of thing is really what I'm worried about. I think they'll actually be able to move the ball still pretty effectively. I think that Jordan Love is fairly accurate from what I remember of him in college and just how he's looked in those very limited opportunities I've seen him. He just really needs to avoid that mistake that he sort of seemed, that one big mistake on a drive that can kill it. And honestly, if he played a game manager role this weekend and really did that the entire game, I think the Packers should be able to come out of this one with a victory with how the Chiefs have been playing. But I don't know if he's going to do that because his tendencies haven't been leaning towards that in the past.
Yeah, the rookie mistakes are going to be inevitable, though. To have him not do something stupid is going to be asking a lot because every rookie QB does. But yeah, watching the one preseason game that he played against the Bills, moving it in between the 15s, he looked great. And I mean, the Bills defense is up there as one of the best right now in the league, and they've left the starters in till like the end of the third quarter in that preseason game, and he was still playing against them. But yeah, the same play came to mind thinking about that as well. Just the bootleg that he just chucked up. But I'd say if there's any defense that you could do that and get away with doing that too, it'd be the Chiefs. I mean, if Dan Sorensen's out there, target him every play. He's been terrible. I don't know how he hasn't gotten benched yet. But yeah, that should help him a lot if Devontae Adams gets out there on Dan Sorensen. But yeah, going against the Chiefs defense, it's going to help a lot with him making stupid rookie mistakes. But if he can cut that down to 1 or 2, the game is winnable for them. But if he has more than that, I think it's out of reach just with how frequently the Chiefs move the ball, even with their turnovers too.
I think 2 could be enough to screw it up. It's if the Chiefs actually take advantage of those 2 mistakes. If those 2 mistakes just end up being like swatted down balls, not a big deal. If those 2 mistakes end up being picks, that could swing the game.
Yeah, well, at least for Jordan Love, he has Devontae Adams back, because I know last week Adams missed a game because of the COVID protocols. But I mean, yeah, the Chiefs' defense has definitely not been great. It's actually been horrible this year. The Chiefs are 4-4 right now, and I think if you're the Chiefs right now, there is time to worry, or you should be starting to worry. But the thing is, that division, that AFC West, I don't think it's as good as what it's looking like right now. I don't know if the Raiders are as good as their record shows. The Broncos, they're 4-4 right now. It's kind of iffy. The Chargers, they've just dropped their last 2 games. I don't know, man. I still think the Chiefs are going to win that division. But yeah, I think with Jordan Love going into, I think it's in Kansas City, I think he'll have a solid game. He'll probably have at least 1 turnover, maybe an interception, maybe a fumble, because as you mentioned, he's going to be a rookie. He's going to make those mistakes. So I don't know. I'm going to probably lean to the Chiefs here, but I could see Love having a solid game. We're going to talk about the Raiders a little more with Henry Ruggs, but I do kind of want to talk about this before. Von Miller is officially now with the Rams. That defense now already has Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. Now they add Von Miller. I mean, What did you guys think about that trade?
I mean, I thought it was a great pickup. The Rams just love not being able to draft too, so that helps them as well. But I've made the joke to Hayden a bunch that if him and I were lined up on a D line with Aaron Donald, we'd be able to get 2 sacks by the end of the season. So putting Von Miller there too, that like Von Miller could get double-digit sacks now at the half point of the season by the end point, just because of the double and triple teams that Aaron Donald faces. That defense just keeps getting better and building it off superstars too. That's what the Rams love to do. And it's really unique because the only other team that does it really is the Titans. And that, didn't work out for him now because your biggest superstar got hurt. But keeping those 3-4 guys healthy that are studs, they're going to win a lot of football games now, more with Von Miller.
When I saw this trade, the first thing I said to Jake was actually that I can't believe how much like the entire NFL landscape is just still sitting and like, I think Von Miller helps this team. That's really what I need to preface with this statement. But I can't believe how much like people are still talking about these players from like the 2011 NFL draft class as if they're huge playmakers, like they're in their prime. I'm just like looking around at names I remember from that era, like Patrick Peterson, Cam Newton, AJ Green, JJ Watt. I don't know if they're as much of an impact as they were in their prime. People still view them that way. I think Von Miller's a significant pickup for the Rams, and it will improve them. But I don't know if it'll be as much of an impact as people think that it will be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Just with what the Rams have done lately, like they gave up a 2nd and 3rd round pick. They gave up 3 first-round picks for Stafford. Now they don't have a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. It is interesting that the Rams pretty much just trade all their assets for players right now. And I think the Rams, to be honest with you, they're probably one of the best teams in the NFL, maybe the best team or the 2nd best team in the NFC. Stafford is looking like an MVP candidate. Of course, he was freed out of Detroit. Adding Von Miller, he definitely is not in his prime as he used to be, but I still think he's a good player, and he'll probably get a few sacks with Aaron Donald being on that team as well. So, I think the Rams it goes to show you that they want to win now, and they don't really care about draft picks, as we've already seen. What have you thought about the Rams season so far? Do you think Stafford right now should be somewhere in that top 3 MVP list?
I think it's very hard to still figure out which, especially in the AFC. The AFC right now, to me, feels like it's wide open. From the NFC perspective, it feels like there's like last week I would have said there's like 2 like really obvious like front runners, and even then like that kind of got like flipped on its head on a week-to-week basis. I think the Rams are in a really good position to be definitely a Super Bowl contender, and it's just so hard because my your recency bias wants you to change your opinion so quickly. But obviously the Rams have had the last 3 game slate they've had have been against like 3 of the worst teams in the NFL, which has really made them look good and really probably given everybody the idea that they're riding high right now. So trying to like combat that with like being realistic in expectations, I still think it is realistic to say that these guys definitely have one of the best rosters in the NFL. And even though I did mention that Von Miller is not what he used to be, I think the crazy thing is that even though he's not nearly at that level, he could be a piece that is potentially the difference between them winning the Super Bowl or not even making it to the Super Bowl or something like that, because that small of a difference with how good this team already is huge. And I think that the addition of Stafford this off season rather really made it so that this team is like one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, for the NFC with me, I still have trouble taking Tampa Bay off of 1, but it's like a 3-way tie for 2 after that. And I agree with what Hayden said. It's the Rams are riding this high of playing these bad teams. And then, going into like last week, I was like, but after this week, they're playing the Titans, so it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a real game. And now the Titans lose their biggest playmaker in Derrick Henry for the season. And now it seems like they might just steamroll over them too. Right now, the Rams have a really easy path to just gobble up regular season wins and then go into the postseason riding high.
Yeah, speaking of the Titans, Derrick Henry is out, 6 to 10 weeks? And at one time, I think Derrick Henry, or at least before he got hurt, he was somewhere in the MVP conversation. It could have been the first player to rush for over 2,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. Do you guys think, that division isn't very good, so they still have a chance to win, but Ryan Tannehill hasn't really played that great, and I think the whole team is based on Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry, or basically he opens for like guys like AJ Brown where they can have big games. But do you think the Titans still win that division and go to the playoffs without Derrick Henry?
Go ahead, Jake.
When the news first broke, I was like, God, their season's done. And then I thought about the AFC South. I was like, the Jags and the Texans and the Colts. There's a real good chance that they still might make it. And then I know I just said that Derrick Henry's season's over, but if they make it into the playoffs, he can come back. Don't want to rush anything, but there's a possibility he can come back. But I still think that they would lose in that first game of the playoffs if it does happen. But Adrian Peterson's there now too, and he is. Hayden's going to get into it. Adrian Peterson is one of the hardest runners in the NFL still, even at 47 years old. So I'm not going to take anything away from him.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson, starting there just because you mentioned him. I actually think that you can really still hand him the rock most of the game. The only thing with him is that nowadays there's absolutely no way that once he gets into the open field, he's running away from anybody anymore. But man, you go watch him in recent years. He's still running like a freight train, unlike anyone else. That man's insane. But with the rest, looking at the Titans as a whole, I think the really important thing to talk about within that division is, yes, Jacksonville, Houston, we have no worries about that. Strange thing about what's happened in the NFL this year, seemingly more than usual, we've had these early season slates where teams have to play two divisional opponents before really bumping into their other divisional opponents. So the Titans have already gotten their two games against the Colts out of the way. They beat the Colts twice, which means the Colts have to exceed the number of wins that the Titans have to take that division from them. That's pretty hard, even if the Titans don't have Derrick Henry for the next 6 to 10 weeks. The Titans definitely will have to start throwing the ball more, but I've been kind of annoyed with the Titans even in the past weeks with Derrick Henry on the field that they haven't been throwing the ball more, because all this offseason, Jake and I talked about how we think AJ Brown could potentially be the best receiver in the NFL. He doesn't get the targets though, but if he did, it would be really interesting to see how that goes. Having Julio on the opposite side is also nothing you can just scoff at. So, you have to think about that too. I think they need to get their passing game going. I think Adrian Peterson may actually help them more than people expect. And I don't think that the run game becomes completely irrelevant for them without Derrick Henry, even though it may seem like it will. It's obviously not going to be nearly as effective, but I think that they can find a way to win a lot of close games, which they usually do anyways. But yeah, I think it'll be able to keep their heads above water, and they have a healthy lead in that division over the one team in that division that could potentially come back. But they're probably, with how the season's trending now, even though they're like best record in the AFC right now, without Henry, they're probably going to be happy if they get the 3 or 4 seed in the AFC.
Well, the Colts are an interesting team because I think the Titans, they shouldn't be afraid of the Texans and Jaguars. Those are one of the 2 worst teams in the league. But the Colts are they're 3-5 right now, and they've surprisingly played a lot of those good teams early. I think the first few weeks they played like playoff teams, and of course they lost to Seattle in week 1 with Russell Wilson. They lost to the Rams 27-24, and then of course they almost beat the Ravens. The Ravens had that miraculous comeback led by Lamar Jackson. But the Colts, I feel like, are a better 3-5 team than we give them credit for. But Carson Wentz is a quarterback that seems to always never give up on a play. And even when a play is not going to get better, he always makes it worse somehow. So that's kind of a thing about the Colts. But yeah, I still think the Titans will probably go 9-8 or 10-7 and still win their division as like a number 4 seed. But I do think with the when they added Adrian Peterson, I don't know how good that's going to be. But I do think with how bad their division is, and I don't know if the Colts can really make that run, I feel like the Titans are still going to win it without Henry. But I do think Henry, if they make the playoffs, he'll be back for the postseason. And I think he'll be like the Derrick Henry of old. But, I mean, we'll see what happens. Now, I did want to mention Henry Ruggs. He looks like he's going to – the whole situation is kind of of course, I think that happened on Tuesday or something like that, where he was charged with a DUI and is facing possibly criminal charges. What do you think about the whole situation?
I think it's dumb to be driving 160 miles per hour when you're sober, let alone dumb, and even dumber to be driving drunk is absolutely stupid in general as well. I mean, now doing them combined is just like, I have no idea what type of decisions you're making in your life. But yeah, no, Henry Ruggs is a guy that coming out of college, probably one of the most, like, in terms of that draft class, probably the guy I was actually most excited for coming out at the receiver position. Really waiting for him to come on with the Raiders, but no, I mean, I don't know how much there is to say about it other than the fact that that's just like, there's like no excuses for those actions. And then that I don't see him being, I don't know, he may not ever get another shot in the NFL, because that's pretty close to as bad as something as you can do. But yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. I don't see any coming back from this. I think his playing days in the league are done. And I mean, that's even before anything, he gets charged with anything or sent to prison. So yeah, I don't know how much more I can add on to what Hayden said, but he's done.
Yeah, we should it is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and I believe in that. Normally, I just don't know what evidence could come out. We have to leave the door open that evidence could come out to change something, but I have no idea with the situation described as it has been now, how evidence would come out to change anything from this story at all.
Yeah, it is disappointing, especially for a guy like Henry Ruggs, who was drafted, was the first receiver taken in the 2020 draft. He was taken before Jerry Jeudy. He was taken before CeeDee Lamb. And, you know, with the whole there, I'm surprised how good the Raiders are doing this year with how many problems off the field they've had with John Gruden. Now they've had a problem with Henry Ruggs. Like, if the Raiders do end up winning their division, I'll be surprised. And I just mentioned I don't necessarily trust the Raiders, but it is kind of disappointing, or not. It is disappointing to happen, or it is disappointing with Henry Ruggs. But I mean, we'll see what happens. There's still time, but it's a disappointing look. I know this, or did you have anything else to add to that, Hayden?
Yeah. I just think it's interesting with the Raiders. That I said to Jake a little while ago after the John Gruden stuff came out, like, I'm not a big fan of John Gruden anyways. Like I said, there's a chance that them being without John Gruden actually helps them become a better team. And I could say that swings them in a positive favor, that type of news, because just like, I don't know, seemed like kind of a cancerous guy to get out of the building. And I think that may have actually pushed them in a positive direction. This situation, on the other hand, even though it seemingly shouldn't be like related to the team as a whole, I could see this pushing them down a bad path and really setting them off in the wrong direction, even though it's just the mistakes of one guy. I feel like that's got to have a huge impact around the team. And I don't know how I'd feel in that locker room. And just, there is the potential for this to go really bad for the team, even though it's just one guy.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Ruggs is supposed to be their number one receiver, and there was so much hype for him, especially with how how much hype he had coming out of the draft, and it is disappointing to hear. I know this was kind of a smaller move, but I mean, we just talked about how bad the Chiefs' defense was, and they added Melvin Ingram from the Steelers. I mean, what did you guys think? Did you think that it was a good move by the Chiefs, or what were you guys thinking?
He's not a sure-handed wide receiver or a good pass blocking offensive lineman, so I don't know how much it really helps the Chiefs. I've said this during the offseason too. whoever gets Melvin Ingram is getting a washed defensive lineman, a washed edge rusher. And he showed that in Pittsburgh. And I mean, Mike Tomlin said something like, we want volunteers and not hostages here. Like, dude, yeah, you're holding them hostage, but I feel like any team he goes to is holding them hostage. He shouldn't be on a team. Like he's getting by on his name alone at this point. I feel like he has some production. He gave the Bills a lot of trouble in week 1, but it seems like that week 1 game for the Steelers has kind of been an enigma for the rest of the season. They haven't played like that against any other team. Yeah, I mean, he got the Steelers a 6th-round pick, so I mean that's good management by them. But I don't know how much more help he gives the Chiefs besides adding another rotational piece with Frank Clark.
Reference, Jake is a salty Bills fan in terms of the Steelers loss. That's the first thing to point out. The second thing to point out is that Jake has also been wanting to just trash the Steelers all offseason. I can't even say for a certain reason, but he has been on that bandwagon. So I should point those out. So anything he says, it's coming from that biased perspective. I really, for whatever I'm just not like excited to watch the Steelers, knowing what like their offense can produce and that type of thing. So honestly, I can't say that I've watched them much since week 1, but I definitely haven't been hearing Melvin Ingram's name as like playing a big impact for anybody. That Chiefs defense has been so atrocious. Whereas before I talked about the Rams getting like a potential middle of the road guy in Von Miller, which is crazy to say considering the name. But that's where I actually think he is at this point. And then Melvin Ingram, like potentially kind of around, I guess, slightly lower tier of middle of the road player, getting added to a Chiefs defense. It could put the Rams over the hump and make them better. I don't know how you say a middle of the road guy changes just an absolutely atrocious defense into anything special. I don't imagine that he'll have much of an impact, just to be completely honest with you. I think one of the main culprits really is, like Jake said earlier, I feel like Dan Sorensen has been playing some of the worst football in the league. And that's not even a joke. We're just talking about the difference in terms of like safeties around the league. It feels like every single team has some solid safeties on their roster now. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are the one team that you can point to and say, hey, yeah, that one guy playing opposite, like potentially one of the best safeties in the league in Tyrann Mathieu, the guy playing opposite him is one of the worst players in the league at his position. And that's only picking on one guy on the Chiefs defense, but as a whole, it's obviously been terrible. And I don't think Melvin Ingram will change that.
Yeah, I mean, he is getting older, as you guys were mentioning, but I mean, it was kind of the Chiefs needed some help on defense and they made some type of move. I think that was all right, but yeah, I don't think he'll make much impact, as you guys mentioned. And of course, we're kind of running short here on time, but I do kind of want to talk more about Deshaun Watson. He didn't get traded. I wasn't surprised. I mean, were you guys surprised at all that he wasn't traded?
I wasn't, because it's, in my opinion, it's pretty simple. The Texans hold the Texans gain nothing from trading him at this point in the year. And the other teams that would be potentially trying to trade for him would gain from trying to get him now. So the Texans are just making a smart move, holding onto him through the offseason. If they traded him now, the Texans would look even worse as an organization as they already have in the past few years. So props to the Texans for finally making a good decision, really, and holding on to him so that they can get the highest value for their former starting quarterback.
Yeah, holding on to him drives up his value at some point when or if he can be traded. And then, I mean, I feel like every team around the league was reluctant to trade for him. I mean, for obvious reasons. And the one team that was really in was the Dolphins. And all that they did by like sniffing their nose around that was just like lose confidence in their QB and have their QB lose confidence in himself. And they're the one team that was really in on him. There were other teams too, but they didn't like let that absorb them at all. Like the Eagles, they could have just completely ruined Jalen Hurts by mentioning it, or any other team that's QB needy. Instead, the Dolphins just ruined Tua by keeping their nose stuck in it all the way up until the trade deadline.
Yeah. And I didn't think he was going to get traded either because we still don't know what the whole deal is. I mean, there's still the alleged assault and stuff like that. They're still like, we don't know. They haven't still figured out. And the NFL still doesn't know what to do yet. Even Roger Goodell admitted he's like, we don't know what to do. Like there's been no ruling, so we can't really make a decision. And I think the Texans have him currently on paid leave, which I think just means that basically he's not going to be playing for the Texans anytime soon. But I think if he does get traded, it's probably going to be Miami. I know Carolina was mentioning they wanted to trade Christian McCaffrey. Then they said at the last minute, no, we're not going to do that. And of course, nobody's going to want McCaffrey, especially with his being injured all the time and that contract he's got. And then I think the Eagles were a little bit in the conversation, but they decided just to hold. But I think I don't think he'll be traded till next offseason. And we probably won't have anything until something is found out because still we have no idea what the whole deal with Deshaun Watson is. So I think I'm with you guys. I was not shocked at all. So, and I guess, and as I mentioned again, we're running out of time, but do you guys have any picks for this Sunday? I know there's not a lot of great games in the slot, but do you guys have any big games for this weekend?
There's not very many games where I'd say I want to pick against the favorite. Definitely the game that I'm going to say I'm watching closely is that Chiefs-Packers game, though. Other than that, actually, I'm going to the Bills-Jaguars game, so I'll be there. But I mean, really, that's not actually an interesting game if you're not rooting for one of those teams. So I'd say keep your eyes on Packers-Chiefs. That's the one that's really interesting me. Also, I want to see where Chicago and Pittsburgh really sit on Monday night because they're kind of two teams that had some interesting views on them heading into the season, and I just want to see where they're at. I think that's a good matchup.
The one game that I'd say keep your eyes on that Hayden didn't say, Atlanta at New Orleans, just to see how Trevor Siemian plays. He played a good quarter and a half of football. I don't know if he can keep that up. Atlanta might be able to upset them.
All right. Again, thanks for coming on, guys. Don't forget to check out the YouTube show, Illegal Hands or Hands to the Face. Again, thanks for coming on. And again, have a great day and enjoy this week of watching football.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.